I hate people, I swear. Hello, my name is Angie. Actually, it's Angela Dawn Riley currently. But whenever I was born, it was Angela Dawn Sawyer-Riley is my married name. I go by Angie, as I have my whole life. I'm in my early 40s. I have gave birth to 4 kids. I got married whenever I was a teenager in 2000. I was born in February of 82. Let's see, what else? I met my husband when I was 16. I lost my mom at an early age. I was estranged from my dad after I lost my mom. I had my grandma and my aunt after I lost my mom. Let's see. I met my husband at the age of 16, and he was from Hamilton County, which is north of me. I was Scott County, both in Indiana, and I moved up there with him. His mom and stepdad had gotten guardianship of me, and we all lived in a 3-bedroom apartment. His dad was a Carmel police officer. His stepdad was a Carmel police officer. His name was Don. He had been at the police department for about 16 years, and then took an early retirement. His mom was Diane. Anyways, they ended up getting guardianship of me from my aunt, and part of the guardianship was that I wasn't allowed to get pregnant until I became of age, and I ended up getting pregnant with my oldest, Brad. Anyways, whenever that happened, I went and got emancipated out of Scott County. I think I was, 17, I believe. 16 or 17. Anyways, we moved to out on our own into a house that we had on a land contract in Hayden, Indiana. It's closer to Scott County than Hamilton, but anyways, so we moved there, and we didn't last long. He ended up working at a factory and having his 2 of his friends move in to split the bills or whatever, and his uncle eventually moved in also. But anyways, I ended up getting booted out by him, and I was pregnant. And so he took me back to my grandma's and dropped me off where I lived whenever I met him. And so I moved back in with grandma, where I stayed up until I had my oldest. The night I went into labor, he had come down to grandma's and got me and we had drove back to Noblesville to his mom and stepdad's. They had moved to the Grayland house on 146th Street from Cool Creek Apartments. Anyways, so the drive threw me into labor or something. Anyways, I laid in bed all night and having contractions, and he got up around 8 or so to go to work, and I couldn't get him awake for nothing. Anyways, so he got up to go to work and seen me crying and in pain, so we went to the hospital and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, Brad was born in Indianapolis, and from there we went back to, whenever I got out of the hospital, we went back to his mom and stepdad's house temporarily until we got a townhouse at Twin Lakes Apartments in Carmel. So we moved in there, and we weren't there long. I don't think it was even a year. It may have been a little over a year. But anyways, he worked for Scotland Yard at that time. His boss was Scott. So he worked from daylight to dark usually, 7 days a week, doing lawn care and landscape, and then in the winter plowing snow. So anyways, we had stayed there. And at that time, we really didn't do much. We would drink wine coolers or eat a couple of Zummas. They were muscle relaxers, and smoke weed occasionally. It was really, that was the worst of the worst, or the worst that we done. Anyways, we ended up getting raided whenever we lived there. He had been at work all day, and they had been watching us. They had set up surveillance on us a month prior, I think. And we're sitting out in the lot watching us, and sitting even in a different apartment and watching. And so they always had surveillance on us, always had the cameras on us. They knew, who came and went, and what we done and what we didn't do. Anyways, he worked all day and had came home, and we were sitting at the table. We were sitting at the table. I had gotten dinner out of the oven, which I think was most likely chicken fries or French fries or something. I've never been able to cook. Anyways, and Bradley was a toddler. He was around the age of 1. And anyways, so he was sitting in the living room in his walker, and our living room and dining room were one big room, and then there was a doorway into the kitchen, and then there was a hallway from the front door with another entry to the kitchen. And then there was a bathroom to the left, and then you went up underneath the stairs, and then you went up the stairs to 2 bedrooms. One was Brad's nursery, and one was mine and the master bedroom. Anyway, so we were sitting there, and we heard the doorknob. Heard one brief little noise, and the next thing you know, it's the whole damn thing come down. Jason started to get up to see who was at the door, and he didn't even make it. And they come in with their SWAT gear and their rifles and all kinds of stuff, and they separated us out the gate and took. He went upstairs to get his shoes, and I think they searched the townhouse. I don't know. That's been a good 26 years ago. Anyways, they let him get some shoes on and took him out in cuffs. And I sat there at the dining room table with Bradley in the walker and was talking to him. And they wanted to know, they were interested in what we, done, our extracurriculars or whatever, and wanted to know who all knew what, and standard stuff, I guess. Anyways, so Don at that time, Don was a stepdad, and he was still a member of the Carmel Police Department. That was where we lived. The ones that came in were said to be or I believe, if I remember right, were Hamilton County Drug Task Force. So anyways, at the same time that either right before or simultaneously, they had pulled Don in from work, or maybe it had been all day that day, because Diane had called looking for him and couldn't find him. They couldn't find him nowhere. And come to find out, by the time we figured it out, we had figured out that they had Don all day, or had pulled him in at the same time or something. I don't remember. But anyways, they had him in questioning. And they separated me and Jason and took him. Diane, I believe, got pulled in, or had went up there to bond them both out, I think. So that's what caused, they ended up going to court and spending thousands of dollars. It took like $20,000 plus just to get Jason out of trouble. And he ended up getting weekends and work release, I think. And that was a year or two later, because where we had the attorney, we kept getting continuances. Anyways, like I said, we didn't do anything at that time. We smoked weed. We'd always, it was just a thing. Anyways, so they charged him with dealing in marijuana within 500 yards or feet of a elementary school. because the elementary school wasn't that far from us. I can't remember what all they charged him with. Anyways, I ended up having to sign a statement giving my side of the story, which was that, he and I lived there. We didn't do anything. If the weed that was involved, I think it had said that I thought Don and Diana knew that we had been smoking or whatever, and I think I said that I had told them. And they had a lot of questions in reference to Don and wanting to know the extent of his knowledge and involvement. And I believe my words were, he handled it like any father would. I mean, Don was always like Jason's dad. He was a father figure to me too. But anyways, so I ended up taking the baby. After they searched it, of course, I had to change his diaper. So they supervised me changing his diaper, and I got to dress him and grab us some clothes and load the car, and we got to leave. Like I said, we didn't do anything at that time. He worked from daylight to dark, and that was it. And it was that way for the whole time I'd been with him, pretty much. When we first got together, we kicked it with a few of his friends, and that was it. But there was nothing major. And he wasn't doing anything. Brad was around a year older, so that would have meant that would have been the middle of 2000, I believe. So we would have been together over 2 years at that time. So you've got something. Anyways, so when that happened, I loaded my baby in the car. I drove a black Lumina 4-door, and I loaded him in the car. And whenever I left, the officers were left at the townhouse. They were finishing up. I don't know what they were looking for. I don't remember. But anyways, so I ended up driving to Scottsburg, my hometown, and had went to my aunt and uncle's house, and that's where we stayed the night that night. I didn't get until late. And I believe it rained. And I think I flew the whole way here, crying the whole way. But anyways, and I believe the raid happened, I think it was on our anniversary. On the day we met, the anniversary of the day we met, because the day we met, from that point, we stayed together. And I ended up moving in with him. And he actually had a girlfriend whenever I got with him. Her name was Nicole. And he lived in Hamilton County, but he was from Austin or from Scott County or whatever. He grew up there a good portion of his childhood or life. But anyways, so I had ended up staying the night at my aunt and uncle's, and then had ended up moving back in with my grandma until I could get an apartment, because the Austin Village apartments were right next door to my grandma. And all I had to do was fill out a government assistance application. So anyways, I can't remember how long he was in custody, but he did get bonded out. Assuming there wasn't no switches made, in which case I wouldn't have had knowledge. Anyways, so I moved. I had stayed with my grandma, and as soon as he got out, he had came home and he had moved. We had moved our stuff. Actually, we left it until we were staying with grandma. And once I got into the apartment, if I remember right, I have amnesia, so I don't know. I would have to double check. But anyway, so after I got my apartment, we moved in there and we had to go get our stuff in the U-Haul and his boss's trailer and move our stuff to the village apartments. We already had stuff stored from the Hayden house in Grandma's barn. And then everything else we had to move down, and we moved into the apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. That way Brad would have a bedroom, and then we had our bedroom. Anyways, it was solely in my birth name because we weren't married at that time. We got married a short time after because the raid would have been in February because it was our dating anniversary. It was I think it was the 13th or give or take a day. But anyways, it was our 2-year, I believe, if I remember right. So anyways, it moved into the apartment, and whenever we didn't split up or nothing, so we moved into the apartment and it was home. And then we ended up getting married. I had found his ex-girlfriend's number in his wallet, which would have been Nikki, and had told him that he had also been staying out or staying gone more than what I was used to. So anyways, I gave him the ultimatum of marrying me or getting out. So anyways, we went that very day. We went and got my babysitter's pennies and cashed them in because he and I both worked, or he may have been off briefly. But anyway, so we went and got, she was one of my friends from school from like elementary on. We went and got her pennies that she had saved, and took them to the bank and cashed them in, and went straight to the courthouse and got the marriage application or marriage license. And the judge it was like 4:00. The judge was on his way out, and we stopped him right there in front of the clerk's office and had both clerks be the witnesses. And he married us right there in the hallway in front of the clerk's window. And that was in May 23rd of 2000. So anyways, we lived at the apartment. We split up why I was there, or why we lived there. I only had the apartment till 2004. And, but anyways, while we were split up, he had moved back to Noblesville and had got a double wide lot. He had rented a double wide trailer next to his mom and stepdad. And he was living there and doing weekends and work release. And there are, I have amnesia, so someday, hopefully I might get to watch this and look back on it and think, oh, that's cool, or whatever. But anyways, a lot of this has been coming up, and it's been because of all the imposters and the identity theft. And some things didn't make sense to some people, and some things at times I feel like I'm remembering 2 versions of my life. And usually I'll be able to sit and break it down, and it'll be my life, and it'll just be different time frames or mixed up time frames. But anyways, so he dated around, I dated around, and then whenever we got back together, he had he had moved from the blue and white double wide to the little white house. It was a house known as an apartment. It was just a few lots away. It was on the corner. So anyways, he fixed that up, and once he got that fixed up, then we ended up moving. We'd stay with him. I still kept my apartment. But we eventually ended up moving or staying there with him and then going home on weekends or whatever. Anyways, we ended up moving from the little white house and the little white apartment. That was with both boys, by the way, because my son was born in 2. My second son was born in 2. But anyway, so we moved several other lots further and moved into a trailer that his mom and stepdad had bought for us. So we could, so I could give up the apartment for whatever reason. So anyways, we moved into the trailer, and I think if I remember right, I was still going home on weekends and still had my apartment, which didn't last long because somebody had blowed the check for the electric bill. And whenever you live in government housing, you have to keep your lights on. If you lose your lights, it's an automatic termination of your lease. So anyways, the check got slowed, and I got the eviction notice for the apartment, and we had already moved, so we had to move everything from the apartment to the trailer, which meant we had to, and he had already gotten new stuff because of where he left me whenever we lived at the apartment and moved down on his own. So he had to get new stuff, because of what I kept. When he left me, I think he only took the bedroom suit. Now he took the bedroom suit and the sofa. I was the one that had to get new stuff. Anyways, so we had to combine my stuff from the apartment with his stuff in the trailer. So we had the shed that was on the property, the maintenance shed where we stored the stuff that we couldn't fit. Like we had 2 sofas, so the sofa we started with, the white leather one, which was his, went for storage, and I don't know what all. Anyway, so we lived in the trailer, and I eventually lost the apartment altogether. We lived there. We moved in there, I think, in 2004 or 2005. 2004, I think. Anyways, in 2005, he had still been cheating and having his affairs or whatever, and I was having, an affair here and there or whatever. Anyways, I ended up getting pregnant. And the odds of it being my husband's were slim, and some say impossible, if you knew what I meant by that. Anyways, so the person that I had been seeing or whatever apparently couldn't have kids. And didn't seem interested in it at all. So anyways, we had sat down and I had come clean with him and told him, you could obviously tell I was pregnant. It's just we didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with it because I didn't want to have to tell him about the affair or whatever. I didn't want to have to deal with it. But anyways, so we had eventually sat down and I was completely and totally honest with him and told him who I believed it to be. And he said that we would keep it and he would raise it as his, and he'd even put his name on the birth certificate. Well, at that time, we only had our 2 boys and then the pregnancy. So anyways, his mom or somebody known as his mom decided that she was going to butt in, and same with his sister and brother-in-law. And they all decided that it was best that I didn't keep it. And I had already went to Planned Parenthood and had an ultrasound. That was how I found out how far along I was. And whenever I went for that, I was past the point to be able to do anything by Indiana state law. So at that time, it also said it was a boy. All 4 of my pregnancies were said to be boy through ultrasound, but I have a strong belief that it was a girl. My 4th was also a girl. But anyways, it was pointed out that it had a big head in the ultrasound. And I was told not to forget that for some reason. Anyways, so we had decided to keep it. He'd said he would sign the birth certificate and raise it as his, and that would be that. Well, his family stepped in, and she came to the door and said, I'd found a place in Ohio, a clinic in Ohio, and the appointment's already scheduled. We've got the voucher and the hotel room booked and yada, yada, yada. And that she was going to pay for it. So I was always real shy and real timid, and I always got suckered into situations that I wanted nothing to do with. And I always had a hard time saying no. especially if I felt inferior to or felt like they had the upper hand in some way. So anyways, lo and behold, she ended up coming to get me one morning, and we drove to Ohio, checked into the hotel, and worst day of my life, worst decision I ever made, and I've regretted it since. I don't recommend giving up a child at all. You will regret it your whole life. And it's been said that I've been involved in her life her whole life, and I still regret it. I don't know what that entails, and I don't want to touch base on it too much because I don't want old accusations to surface again. Because people made a huge ordeal about it for a long time, and they've been leaning towards it too. But anyway, it's now 18. By going by ultrasound photos, but there's question on if the ultrasound photos were switched or not. If they switched them, then that means there's a totally different baby that was ultrasounded under my name, and which at that time I wouldn't have questioned it, wouldn't have said anything about it, and now it's like anything's possible, and the possibilities with that are unthinkable and unimaginable. But anyways, so now my oldest is getting ready to be 25, my second's 22, my third is 18, and my fourth is 16 and getting ready to be 17 next month. She was born in May of 2007. So anyways, we lived at Grayland. After we got back from Ohio, the night that the Mama had decided to go to the hotel bar and leave me in the room on my own. And she knew the neighbors in the neighboring room. So anyways, worst decision I ever made, and I don't know what else to say. We were in a bad time in our life. We both had drug problems with oxycotins and heroin and crystal meth. And we were on food stamps, and the boys were on Medicaid. And we lived off Mama and Papa Foreman at that time. Well, we didn't live off of them. We lived on our own, but we depended on them for a lot, including running to when needed or needing to cry or whatever. Some say that was a part and false or fake, but anyways, that was more of a comical joke. Sarcasm even. Anyways, so went back home to Noblesville, and I stayed in bed for like the next 6 months and done nothing but cry. I suffered with depression anyways, and that made it extremely worse. So anyways, I ended up getting pregnant, my fourth pregnancy with my daughter, who we also considered giving up. And anyways, we ended up keeping her, and we weren't ideal, but we worked when we every chance we got. We also his stepdad was the manager of Grayland Place at that time. And we still had to, pay rent or whatever. But so we worked for Grayland every chance we got, which was applied toward the rent. We also mowed yards for there, which was applied toward the rent. His stepdad also owned numerous. His mom and stepdad also owned numerous companies. They owned a cleaning company called Double D Cleaning, D&D Prepping. They managed Grayland Place, which then turned into Tom Eaton's Enterprises, but it was still Grayland Place. He owned Neighborhood Security Patrol. He owned Foreman Investigations. I think that's it. There may be one more. But anyways, so we worked every chance we got. We would go and help out and do private investigator or DPI work. We would do security for the security company, which was patrolling 3 specific neighborhoods. One was the Village of West Clay out of Carmel, and one was Hamilton proper in Hamilton County, and then one was Britton Falls. Britton Falls was beside Deer Creek or Verizon Music Center. West Clay was in Carmel, and I believe Hamilton proper was Noblesville or Fishers. But anyway, so plus I worked whenever I could. I didn't like the gas station thing or the grocery store thing. We worked for the cleaning company, done the prepping thing, done the remodeling thing for Grayland. So anyways, we worked, and we stayed home. The kids were in, at that time, they had started in Austin, and whenever Brad started kindergarten in Austin, he done basketball there. But whenever we moved back to Noblesville, they had eventually gotten into karate classes and then Cub Scouts. So anyways, and plus I would go with them on school field trips and stuff like that. But we stayed home and worked when we could and hung out with the kids, basically. Our kids stayed in the neighborhood and played with the neighbors' kids or whatever. So just because we had, our drug habits or whatever doesn't mean nothing. We were good people. We just kept to ourselves. Anyways, we knew a few of the neighbors, and I mean, that was about the extent of it. Family would come up and stay sometimes, like my aunt and my grandma and cousin would come up and stay, or my aunt and my grandma. They'd come up for the weekend or whatever and stay. His stepsisters would come and stay with us whenever every chance they got, or his cousins would. So it wasn't nothing for us to have family over. We were going to a methadone clinic, and we quit going 2 or 3 times, and we would always go back. 2 different ones in the state. So anyways, we ended up going through some pretty tough times, and ended up he went to get his teeth cut out and to get dentures, and ended up getting put in pain. I don't know what it was that aggravated him, but it had him bawling. I'd never seen him cry like that. And he had looked at me and told me to call his stepdad and to have him come and get me and the kids, that we couldn't stay there. We had to leave. So his stepdad came and got us, and me and the kids moved in with him. And that was the very day of his surgery. But anyways, hold on, I gotta plug this up. So anyways, I went and got my impressions at the same time he got his, and I was supposed to have my teeth also, and excuse me, for whatever reason, couldn't get them. So, but I had my impressions made for them. I just couldn't get them. And that's happened 2 or 3 times for some reason. So I don't know what it is. But anyways, he had just moved to, right around the time my daughter was born in 7, he had bought a new house and had left the Grayland house. So he moved into a 2-story house. It was had a basement and then the ground level. Excuse me. And this is my life. That doesn't mean it's just solely my life. But anyways, so we started staying there. He eventually moved in with us there, and we kept our trailer, and we even would go there daily. Like before he moved in with us, I would go to take the girls and the boys to school. I'd take his stepdad's girls to school, and then I'd take the boys to school. Then I'd go spend the day at the trailer with Jason and take him to do his errands. And we'd go to the clinic, and then we'd go home. Or I'd take him back home, and then I'd go get the kids, and we'd all go back to his stepdad's while he stayed at the trailer. So we done that for a while, and then he, like I said, he ended up moving into his stepdad's with us. And we still worked for him, or went to work with him, which was working for him. But anyways, so whenever we left there, we stayed there for over a year or two. And then I believe it goes blank there, but I think we moved back into the trailer. And it wasn't long until after we moved back in the trailer, I think. Pretty sure, because whenever I got the call about Grandma being diagnosed with dementia and saying she couldn't live on her own, and that she was living with my aunt and uncle and drove nuts, and the whole house was drove nuts, I remember we had to load up both vehicles, load the kids up and load her clothes up in both vehicles and drive down. Grandma had called me crying, begging me to come and get her, wanting me and the kids and Jason to move in with her so she could go home because she was tired of staying at Donna's and Tom's. And Donna was drove nuts, saying she couldn't do anything with her and she wanted to go home, and the doctor wouldn't let her live on her own. And this and that. So anyways, I finally, I tried to talk her into moving up there with us and telling her I'd let her have my daughter's room. And that wasn't going to work with her, which I don't blame her. And she had said the house was supposed to be mine anyway, so it better to be moved into it and settled. And that way when something happened to her, it would be mine. Anyways, she ended up suckering me into it by crying, and we loaded everything up into the car and drove to Scott County and left the trailer locked up. At some point, the trailer got broken into, and a lot of stuff got stolen and ransacked, and I can't remember if it was after we moved in with Grandma or before. But anyways, they had broken in and stolen my checkbooks and some IDs and some titles and all kinds of stuff. I think they ended up getting the vehicles. I can't remember though. But anyway, so we drove down. We went to Grandma's, and I think they stayed. And I came to my aunt's to get her, and we had agreed on. I told him because I said if I give up the trailer, if we leave, then I'll lose the trailer because it was in his stepdad's name. It was ours, based on Dawn and Diane's divorce decree, but we hadn't put our name on it yet. And Dawn wanted out from underneath of it. So I told him, and we didn't have the money to have it moved down here. So I told Donna and Grandma both, I said, if we move down there, then I'm going to be leaving the trailer behind. And that's all me and the kids and Jason have. That's our security and stability. That's our home. And so they both agreed that if we moved in and took care of her, that Grandma wanted the house to be mine, so that's how it would be. So anyways, so we left, we moved in with Grandma, and I got to go back to the trailer to get 2 truckloads, I think. I got our what little bit of the bedroom suite we had there. I got it and put it in the barn with the rest of it. And I got some odds and ends stuff. I got 2 truckloads though, and had to leave 3/4 of it behind and never got to go back and get it. And I still don't know what happened to it. I've heard multiple versions. I've heard it's still there. It was just remodeled, the outside. I've heard that it was stolen and moved and they couldn't find it nowhere. I've heard it was left on the side of the Interstate 65 in a field. And I've heard that they kept it. So I don't know, but I don't talk to any of them anymore. I haven't really. I've seen them a few times in several years, I guess, or somebody. Anyways, so we ended up living with Grandma, and I had quit the drug use except for crystal meth. I was smoking it like crazy. Namely because I was running after 3 kids, 2 dogs, a cheating husband, and an elderly grandma who was totally dependent on me. Done nothing but cry and smoke, and every other second of my time was spent changing diapers or running after scream kids or being blocked by certain individuals or forces. Anyway, so it took its toll, and after I lost her in May of 12, I kind of went over the deep end a little bit, and he wasn't staying home. He was having an affair on me and had been. The kids changed, and at the time I didn't catch it. Hell, he even changed, and I didn't catch that neither. So anyways, I may have had a little incident with an attempted suicide. Grandma had been prescribed Ambien before I lost her, and all of her meds were left in my kids' safe in her bedroom. And I had went and got her Ambien and downed them and laid down and went to sleep and cried myself to sleep in bed. And anyways, I ended up waking up with the worst hangover ever, and that was the 3rd time over my life. There's been one since. I don't recommend doing it. I won't. It's not an issue anymore, but occasionally it does happen, and when it does, certain things will get a hold of me or get control of me, and they'll drive me nuts, and they'll taunt me and taunt me, and I'll just lose it. And whenever I lose it, they'll overtake me. But anyways, it's been several years since that's happened, and like I said, I've learned my lesson from it. And so anyways, the past few years I've been actually trying and been having goals and thinking about plans and wanting to do something with my life before I lose it, because I feel I'm terminal, or at least that's how I feel anyways. Regardless, I feel like somebody's trying to kill me anyway. So, and sometimes it feels like they're not going to quit until they do. So, regardless, because of what I'm going through, it doesn't matter if I'm terminal the medical way or not, because sometimes it feels like they get me. Anyways, so we started fighting really bad, and he had started smacking me around. Some things happened. He had clocked one of my boys, and whenever that happened, I had sent him to my mother-in-law's. I had kept my daughter initially, and then she ended up taking my daughter also. Well, what I didn't know was that I may have a different person versus my husband, or I may have had my original husband versus the one I was used to at that point. I don't know. At the time, I didn't think anything about it, and there was only one, and I had been with the same one for 16 years, and that was that. And all I knew was that something was wrong based on the way he was acting, and based on the fact that we weren't getting along. And it wasn't because of the drug use. The drugs were still there, but we were trying, and at some point, I eventually had gotten completely off of them. Except I even quit the meth. Eventually. So anyways, I don't know what happened. I don't know what was different. I just knew the stuff was different. People were different, and I didn't like it. So, anyways, we had ended up getting into it, and I was in my own bed when it happened, and that's I've got like 8 or 9 plus fractures in my face and head, and that it's a result of one night, and I'm not sure. I can't tell you nothing certain about it. All I know, I can't even tell you if it happened anymore. But for a long time, I could tell you that it happened, and it was a revolver. It was one of my family heirlooms. It was a revolver, an old one that belonged to my grandparents and been in my family supposedly for 5 to 9 generations. Anyways, it had got put in my mouth, and the trigger got pulled and didn't go off. Well, we had been screaming and fighting with each other, and I was pinned down, so whenever it didn't go off, it got pulled out of my mouth and got turned on me, and I got cracked with it right here by the butt of it. I don't know what happened. All I know is whenever I came to, I couldn't open my eye at all. It was like out here, and it was black and blue. I supposedly got my clothes taken off and got put in the back of a Jimmy, and supposedly drove to my mom's grave and draped over my mom's tombstone. But I don't know if that's true or not. Anyways, and then whenever I came to, whichever one I had, and I don't even know which one it was sitting on the bed with his head in his lap, or in his hands. And nothing was really said. We kind of tiptoed around it. But anyways, it was out of character. Anyways, so we ended up losing. We ended up making it. My mother-in-law kept the kids for the month of December, and then they ended up getting took to my aunt and uncle. One set got took to my aunt and uncle and left on the doorstep, and one set drove to grandma's and met, and Diane dropped them off at grandma's. So, and then there were like 3 other sets, where 3 to 5 other sets where the same thing had happened, and there were all guardianship hearings. Similar, but basically the same scenario. So anyways, so my aunt had ended up getting, my aunt and uncle had supposedly ended up getting temporary guardianship or emergency guardianship of them, January of 13. And she had tried to get me to sign a paper, and I refused to sign it. And I had wanted him to come back home, but I had to get control of him and what was going on with whoever I had, because I couldn't bring him back into that environment. Anyways, it never happened. I never got control. And the head trauma screwed me up. I wasn't right for a long time. I think it threw me, whenever it happened, I think it threw me into seizures, and I think it may have stroked me. But the attempted suicide I had months before that. I think I stroked with that one also. But anyways, so they ended up, I went the next 11 months having problems functioning, having problems thinking, and being timid and scared, and jumpy and jittery. I got down to 67 pounds, and walked around so nervous, and I never knew whenever his or her temper was going to flare, and I never knew when they were going to overtake him, and then he was going to overtake me. But anyways, we made it at grandma's off. We managed to keep it till summer. And the electric got shut off, and I ended up leaving. We ended up leaving and going and staying at his mom's, and she got tired of it and eventually just said that I couldn't come back. So my aunt had called me while we were living at his mom's and had said that she was having a yard sale at grandma's, and that we had needed to get our stuff out because she was selling everything. and was supposedly listing the house for the house to be put up for sale. I didn't have anywhere to take anything. So she had told me that she had done had to do a walkthrough with the police on the property, and that photos were taken, and that we weren't allowed to come back. If we were caught back on the property, we'd be arrested for trespassing. And that I had sometime that week, I had to call and make arrangements to meet her up there to get my stuff that week. And I wasn't able to because I didn't have anywhere to take anything. So she ended up supposedly having the art sale. I don't know which one version of her had it, or who took the photos with law enforcement. But I think they were taken with the mind of custody, because there was pictures of tasers and dope paraphernalia, and somebody had already been in it and ransacked it. They broke, or whoever went into it ransacked it from top to bottom, side to side, and it was a complete mess. The dishes were piled up on our end, but I mean, it had been ransacked, and I don't know who or what or how. And anyways, excuse me. So I ended up, walking around, and for whatever reason, I had nobody to go to. I had nobody to turn to, and don't know why. He would drop me off, or he would leave me, and then he'd come back and get me. It was like there was more than one, and I didn't catch it. So basically, one would start trouble or get what he would want and then leave, and then one would step in and come and get me or something. I don't know. It wasn't normal, and it wasn't right by any means. But anyways, so he ended up, we were in a hotel one night. We bounced around from hotel to hotel for a while, and we were at a hotel one night, and he ended up waking me up in my sleep telling me he was leaving and that he had to go to Walmart and he'd be straight back. Well, he never came back, and whenever I got up at checkout time the next morning, I walked to my aunt's, and my aunt had said that he had called from Scott County Jail, that he had gotten arrested for possession of a needle and shoplifting. So I didn't know what else to say, but anyways, so I had started staying at my aunts and uncles with my kids. Anyways, he ended up, they ended up finding him in Scott County Security Center or Detention Center or whatever, or at the jail, hanging from the shower. They supposedly cut him down and called 911. Well, the ambulance got there to get him and transported him to Scott Memorial. From there, he was supposedly stat flighted to University of Louisville, which is by helicopter. Whenever he got to University of Louisville, they eventually ended up declaring him brain dead and paralyzed from the neck down because of a broken neck and a fractured or a spinal injury. So I had signed the DNR order once they said that, once the doctor had talked to me and his mom and had said all of that. Looking back on things, nothing makes sense, but nothing was right anyway. So, and I went from having family to not having, having next to nobody. And before he had gotten locked up, whenever he would take off and leave me, I'd, walk to my aunts and uncles and stay. Or there were nights where they all left me homeless, and I'd sit out on the front porch all night. There was even a night in the dead of winter where I'm pretty sure I went into Braxton Hicks and was pregnant and had no idea. I still don't know where it went, if that is what it was. But I sit out in the freezing cold in the dead of winter, it's snowing and icing, and big-bellied pregnant, supposedly. And so anyways, I've been through it since I've lived here. Anyways, so we ended up having his funeral. His funeral was I didn't know what to think about his funeral. First of all, I'd gotten drugged. I think I'd gotten drugged for it. And it wasn't right. They had the coffin moving, had it looking like he was breathing, and had a snake under his shirt. And it was crazy. Nobody believes that. But anyways, I stayed with my aunt and uncle and my kids, and even she would take me and drop me off and tell me that I had to, like, at a halfway house or a homeless shelter. One was in Louisville and one was in Indianapolis, I think. Just dropped me off and left me. Like, out of character, and I couldn't believe it. But anyways, then we'd get into it, or before that is when they called the law on me 2 or 3 times and had them remove me. But anyways, there was lots of rumors and accusations stemming around of all of that, and I've wondered since. But anyways, other than that, I've lived here. I went to county jail a couple of times, which was for violation of probation or for drinking, which I ended up having to go to prison for 6 months in Rockville. But other than that, and I moved in with my dad once or twice. But other than, I lived with my dad for like 9 months or a year. And whenever I'd go to jail, I'd come back here as soon as I'd get out. And then even with Dad, whenever I got locked up when I lived at Dad's for OWI, I wasn't able to move back in, so I had to. I ended up moving out of Dad's as soon as I got out of jail and moving in here. So whenever I got out of prison, I ended up coming straight back here too. I just can't remember if I moved back in with Dad briefly or if I stayed here. But anyway, so I think I've been here since I got out of prison, and that was in May of 16. And then I moved in right before his funeral, which would have been summer of 13. About 7 months after my kids moved in. Then I lived here whenever I was in the 90s, early 90s. I lived here, like after my mom's funeral. She had went and got guardianship of me, so I lived here off and on from 12 to 14, or no, from 11 to 14. And I went through 4 sets of guardians my teenage years. So I've moved out, a few times and got new guardians. And then, once it wouldn't work, and I'd move right back in. So I had friends' parents were my guardians. My dad and stepmom were my guardians. My aunt and uncle were my guardians. And then my mother-in-law and stepfather-in-law were my guardians. So anyways, but I lived here since, and like I said, it has history. My aunt and uncle lived here most of my life, if not all. My aunt was the coordinator for the Scott County Angel Tree, and she was a social worker at the Division of Family and Children and Social Services, the welfare office, basically. And then my uncle was a third shift grocer or stock person at the JC food store. So, and they had done that. They had both done all that for like 40 years or so. And they've lived here for close to 40, I think, too. I'm 42, so it's been 40 years, give or take. So anyways, and they have one son. She had a miscarriage with twins before my cousin. And then after she miscarried them, she had her son. And that's it. So, and then I'm an only child on my side of things. My husband had, his mom had him and a sister, and then his dad had his 2, full-time had his brother, half sister. And then there was one other brother, that was they all had different moms, except for the 2 he had full-time. So anyways, that is a little about me. Obviously me explaining that caused some turmoil. I'm not sure what kind of turmoil. But anyways, my Jason's stepdad he had also worked as a police officer on the governor's detail in Indianapolis for the Capitol Police. That was while me and the kids lived there with him, and I can't remember if Jason lived there at that time or not. But anyways, he had 3 girls of his own, and then he had also had 2 miscarriages before his girls, which were boys. So, and then my dad, his funeral was a few years back, and my grandma's on his side was a few years back also. One was before the other. So anyways, whenever his mom and stepdad divorced, she moved to Seymour and dated around. And she ended up getting remarried to the one she's currently with, I believe. So they're from Seymour, and he had 3 boys of his own. So my husband's got a lot of ex-step family, numerous ex-step families. Diane was married like 6 or 7 times. She had Jason when she was 14 in Kentucky, and Tasha was like a year or 2 later. She didn't keep Tasha though. Tasha lived with her dad, and Jason spent a lot of his childhood with his step family, the Turners. Spent a lot of time at the Turner farm or Turner property or whatever. But anyways, so that's a little about me. But I also ended up dropping out of high school my sophomore year, 3 days after I met my husband. So what? You want to say hi? Do you want to say hi? Anyways, I guess that's about it for now. I've got some parasites sitting here, and I don't know what the problem is in this room, but every time I sleep in here, I always have issues with them, and it's driving me crazy, so I've got to find the source of it. So I'm going to go, I guess. Happy Friday. Have a nice Friday night. And hopefully I'll be seeing one of my boys here soon. I've got many kids that may or may not be mine. I may have some that are mine that I may have lost in some fashion and wasn't aware of. Or they may have been carried by other people. But either way, I have a very good, credible reason to believe that they exist. I just don't know how to go about handling it or proving it. And then some are known as mine, and so I'm known as mom by default. And some, their parents got in spots and sent them my way for whatever reason, which I don't recommend in any fashion, because I failed at everything I've ever tried in my life. Everything I've ever done in my life, I failed at miserably. And I can't. My health is so far gone, and where I'm dependent off of other people, I can't do nothing for myself, much less anybody else. But anyways, my laptop is overheating from where I dropped it, and the fans broke on it. So I'm going to have to hop off of here. Have a very good weekend if you don't see me anymore or something. Anyways, gotta go. Bye.